and thus granted United States citizenship to the newly freed black slaves and granted them civil rights and protection of the federal government. But again, they got civil rights, not unalienable rights. They know they got a bad deal. They didn't get the unalienable rights, they just got civil rights. There were two parts of the 14th Amendment. The first part was a person is a legal fiction. A U.S. citizen is a legal fiction like a corporation or a trust is. It's just created. It doesn't represent, it doesn't mean an actual live individual human being. That's not the person that they're talking about in the 14th Amendment. But they created a U.S. citizen, a fictitious citizen. The U.S. citizen isn't a citizen at all, because a corporation can't have citizens. A corporation can only have franchisees. That's why they call it the Franchise Tax Board here in California, because if you're a U.S. citizen or a resident, you're a franchisee of the state of California corporation, and thus you're subject to the income tax, and you have to give back to the corporation that gave you something. And what the newly freed black slaves and U.S. citizens had to give back in order to get protection and so-called benefits from the federal government was they had to give up their unalienable rights. In fact, they had to become property of the federal government. The birth certificate was created for the children of the newly freed black slaves. Anybody here got a birth certificate still? You're a black slave. They were created for the black slaves. It enrolled the black slaves' children as property of the federal United States. When you get a birth certificate, you become property of the federal United States. Your birth certificate is transferred to the Bureau of Census, to the Department of Commerce. You are enrolled as a beneficiary of the Federal Reserve System, and you become obligated to the national and federal debts. That's one of the foundational instruments, one of the adhesion contracts, we call them. And so, from the point of the 14th Amendment, the second part of the 14th Amendment, which people aren't aware of, is that it says that no citizen shall question the debt, which established the precedent whereby if you became a U.S. citizen, you no longer could question the federal government's spending. You just became obligated, carte blanche, to whatever shopping spree the federal government was up to. And so from the 14th Amendment on through till about 1933, after the Great Depression, that's when most white Americans began to transfer their citizenship over to the federal United States. After 3 or 4 years of the hardships of the Great Depression, people were very demoralized. And so when they enrolled in the Social Security system,